morning, everybody. This is going to be an incredible panel because we have such talent that we're so excited to showcase for you today. And I'm going to call you up, and you're going to run up here. No running, but come on up when I call you, and we'll go from there. So first, I'm so excited to introduce Zarka Nawaz, who is a Canadian film and television producer. And if it's okay, I'm going to do my full introduction, and then you could clap after. Yes. All right. Zarka Nawaz is a Canadian film and television producer, a published author, and public speaker who created the internationally renowned CBC comedy series Little Mosque on the Prairie, the world's first sitcom about a Muslim community living in the West that has been broadcast in over 60 countries. According to the LA Times, the genius of Zarka's series is that the characters resonate with viewers all over the world. Her current projects are premiering. Zarka is streaming on CBC Gem, and there is a book, Jamila Green Ruins Everything. So we could hear more about that. So welcome, Zarka. Next, we have Asif Manvi. Many of you, gosh, it's like, where do we start? Everyone has incredible bios, so because of time, I'm going to be condensing. Essentially, widely known for his work as a correspondent on the multi-Emmy award-winning The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, Asif Manvi is an award-winning actor, writer, and comedian with 3 decades of experience in the industry. He co-created Halal in the Family, which immediately garnered over 500 million media impressions and addressed through parody and satire Islamophobia. Asif is currently a series regular as Ben in the CBS series Evil.
Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus. All right. Next, we have Hisham Tawfiq. With a journey to acting that was anything but typical, Harlem native Hisham Tawfiq served as a former platoon leader in the Marine Corps, then served 20 years as a New York City firefighter, including working as a first responder on 9/11. Today, Hisham plays the series regular role of African Muslim bodyguard Dembe Zuma on the Emmy Award-winning show The Blacklist. And I did have another line, I'm going to just say it. Tapping into his lived experience of dispelling racism and Islamophobia he faced off the screen, Hisham has worked with the show's creators to ensure an accurate and positive portrayal of a nuanced Muslim character of African descent on the screen. Welcome, Hisham. Next, we have Oba Muhammad. A New Yorker at heart, Oba Muhammad is an LA screenwriter who found her passion not when pursuing a career as a doctor, but rather a storyteller. She worked her way up from script coordinator on The Killing and caught her big break when she was accepted into the prestigious ABC writing program. Oba has worked for ABC's The Whispers, CW's Arrow, and DC's Legends of Tomorrow. She has recently shot a pilot, a reboot of the iconic and Emmy award-winning series LA Law for ABC. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Idil Muhammad. Idil is a director, producer, and writer whose films have been featured both internationally and nationally at several film festivals, including the Toronto International Film Festival, Black Star, and Sundance. Ooh. A graduate of UC Berkeley, her work has led her around the world. She was one of 5 women directors to direct a short film for Glamour Magazine's The Girl Project, a series focusing on girls' education around the world. In Malawi, India, Brazil, and the US, in 2020, she co-wrote an episode on season 2 of Apple TV's award-winning show, Little America, and directed One Week Notice, a 5-part docuseries on Revolt TV. She is currently attached to direct and in development on the feature film adaptation of the Penguin Press novel From a Crooked Rib by author Nuruddin Fatah, and is developing some exciting projects for television and film that we look forward to hearing more about. Welcome. So let's jump in. And this first question is for everyone, okay? We've got a tight panel. So the first is, tell us about your journey. What was your journey like? How did you get where you are? How do you impact representation on the series you star in and the ones you write on? And oh, you have 5 seconds. No.
Do we start like?
Yes, let's go ahead with Zarka.
Okay, sure. Can everyone hear me? This is working.
Yeah.
So I would say it was probably 1995 or 1996. There weren't, I had not known or heard of Muslims in the media or television or film, so there weren't a lot of role models. And I was trying to figure out how I could even begin this career. And then the Oklahoma bombing happened in the United States, and there were pictures of Muslim suspects on the newspaper. And the next day it was Timothy McVeigh, like overnight. And I thought, oh my God, like the stereotypes of Muslims as terrorists is so strong that all this attention was on this one group, and then suddenly it's this white guy. And I thought, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I could turn political issues into satires. And I made a short comedy film called Barbecue Muslims, where these Muslims are sleeping at night and their barbecue blows up. They're immediately, arrested for being Middle Eastern terrorists. And of course, I thought it deserved an Oscar. I submitted it to the Toronto International Film Festival, and I was a student at the Ontario College of Art, I should mention, and there were no actors. They were like my neighbors that I had recruited, and my brother. And I got this very angry phone call from the guy who programs films at the Toronto Film Festival, and he goes, "Listen, there are going to be so many angry filmmakers who have produced technically perfect films, and then there's you who submits this, but we simply can't ignore that we have never seen a comedy about Muslims and terrorism ever. And you are the first one, and we have to let you in based on just the audacity and the originality alone." And he programmed it, and then when I went and I was in the audience, I saw people laughing. And that was the first time it dawned on me that, oh my God, you can write comedy, you can write political comedy in a way that can get people to hear, the story about Muslims and Islam that no one's ever done before. And he had given me this gift, because once you get into the Toronto International Film Festival, in the Canadian system, the way it works in Canada is that you can apply for grants. So I started applying for grants and started making other films, Death Threat, Random Check, Fred's Burqa, and then eventually, the National Film Board rescued me, and they said, we know you can make funny films, make something serious. So I made a documentary about patriarchy in the mosque culture. And they sent me to the Banff Television Festival. And they said, we're gonna pay your way, it's just we're showcasing all our people. And I said to my friend, why do people go to this festival? And they're like, oh, normally people go to Banff to pitch TV shows. And she's like, you should take advantage of this and come up with a television show. And I said, how do you do that? And she gave me a pitch document. She was come up with a log line, characters, an idea, and I did. So from that documentary, I thought, what if there was an imam who was a lawyer, decided to stop being a lawyer, and became an imam in a little teeny tiny mosque in the middle of nowhere? Because I live in the prairies, and I live in Regina, Saskatchewan, which is above North Dakota. How would that change the dynamic of the mosque? I went there, pitched it, and CBC said, we like this idea. And at the time, CBC wasn't known for massive global hits. Someone said to me, it's just gonna go into development, it'll disappear. But then there was all this attention from around the world. And they were like, Muslims, comedy, Islam in a mosque, a satire, there's no way CBC will survive. And we ended up getting the ratings we needed to make it. And it became this massive global hit. At CBC, nobody would have predicted that a show about Muslims in the middle of nowhere in Canada would have been the show that launched the network. And from there, that's when I started learning the whole issue of being in a writing room, writing, learning the craft, learning episodic television. Anyway, I could go on forever because my story is long, but I wanted to. That was the thing that had launched my career. Your turn.
As you said, I started 30 years ago, so buckle in, buckle up. But I want to congratulate all the white people that have showed up today to learn about Muslims. It's very commendable. You guys are here. Allies. It's like a Russell Peters comedy show. My story started in, I grew up in the north of England in Bradford, and I was a little kid who wanted to be an actor and watched Hollywood movies and stuff, and then my family moved to America in the 80s, and And I guess I was sort of working always. I was always doing comedy and dramatic stuff as well in school and college, and I got a degree in theater and blah 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 and all of that, and came to New York, and then wrote a one-man show back in the late '90s called Sakina's Restaurant, which was the first solo show. It was the first play about a South Asian Muslim family, written by a South Asian Muslim, to be produced in the mainstream New York theater world. And so I did that. That really, we got we got like a lot of awards and stuff, and then did that around the world, and then launched my career. I ended up doing TV and movies and stuff, and then ended up on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, which was another huge step for me in terms of, and it was right after I got on this Daily Show in 2006, which was right when the Iraq War had sort of was in full swing, and so it was a great time to be a Muslim. It was not like today. I feel like we're kind of forgotten now. The pandemic and and Me Too, we kind of got like shoved aside. It's all about So and back then we were front and center as the demons, and so and so I was doing that, and it was a great place to sort of cultivate. You talk about satire and things, and I just want to say I think it's sad today actually, because I feel like nobody wants to do satire anymore. Not really. Like, I see a lot of friends of mine who are amazing writers who are writing really great satirical, political stuff, and a lot of the big Disneys and Netflixes of the world are not really interested in doing it. It's very blue sky now. It's all like make people feel happy because we just went through a pandemic, and so nobody really wants to speak truth to power anymore, or not as much as they used to. But anyway, then I got The Daily Show, and then after I was there for 10 years, and then I produced a film. Actually, thank you. I just needed a job. It's not really applause worthy. It was a paycheck. So congratulations for not getting fired. I guess that's good. But I ended up making a movie. I wrote this movie called Today's Special, about a Muslim family that owned an Indian restaurant in Jackson Heights, Queens, and it was based on Sakina's Restaurant, and we turned it into a film. It came out in 2010. It's available somewhere, all over somewhere online, and it was the first ever sort of movie about a Muslim family that didn't have anything to do, because this was like also 2010. I was still getting scripts where every Muslim was a terrorist, and there was like the towers were still falling in the background while you had two Muslims like conspiring in the foreground, and then the tower. And I was like, well, it's 10 years now. Can we stop with the towers falling? And so it was. This was, and I remember there was a scene in that movie that I really insisted the director not put any music under, and it was the father and the son praying namaz, and it was a 2.5 minute scene of just these two men, a father and a son, praying namaz, and there was no dialogue, there was no music, nothing underneath it. And I was very proud of that scene because it sort of, for me, it was something I wanted to put into the world, which is like watching an American audience just have to watch two Muslim men praying, and it not be about anything other than just the fact that they are two men praying, and it wasn't about blowing anything up or killing anyone or any kind of agenda. It was just the agenda of prayer. Anyway, so, and then I ended up doing a lot of TV and stuff, and now I'm on Evil, which is, on Paramount Plus, and very excited to be playing an atheist who comes from a Muslim family but has rejected Islam and all religions, and is a scientist. So I guess I've come full circle. Anyway, on to
Incredible. Okay, Hisham, and I should say, let's maybe try to keep remarks to about a minute or two.
Yeah, sorry.
Just saying. Should have said that earlier.
Well, my journey has been quite different to the stage and TV and film. Born and raised in Harlem, oldest of 5. My father was Imam, a student of Malcolm X, and a sheikh. So early on, from birth, I was taught the importance of being African American, of being Muslim, and it being like this double-layered cake of obstacles as I moved throughout life. And I think in my time in the Marine Corps, corrections, the fire department, the common denominator that just kept coming up was being Muslim and African American. And being in the fire department, well, being in the Marine Corps when Desert Storm happened was an issue. Being in the fire department when 9/11 happened was an issue. I was in the fire, on the job for 6 or 7 years. 9/11 happens, and now everybody looks at me like I'm the problem. So even after I got out of the Marine Corps, I went into TV and film and landed this show, The Blacklist. I was excited because it was like, oh, this ex-freedom fighter, this African, this Muslim. And I had no lines for the audition. It was all improv. So I just basically took all of my childhood experiences and put it on Dembe. I was only supposed to do 1 episode. That turned into 2 episodes, to 3 to 4, now we're going on 10 seasons. And around the 4th or 5th seasons, it just dawned on me that we needed to show this Muslim's character's conflicts, his morals, his values, his life, and him practicing his Islam. Lucky for me, the producers, the writers, the creators were open to it, and we had a lot of conversations about what that looked like. So in season 1, episode 9, I got to do Surah Ikhlas outside of this box with Raymond. And for me, it was just a very proud moment, being Muslim, being African American, and doing a scene that, like the brother said, where I was reciting a prayer and I wasn't shooting anybody, killing anybody. I was just actually preparing to die in an honorable way. And that just had a profound impact, I believe, on the audience. I got many messages about the portrayal of this Muslim character. And I was excited about just where it went. We got to show conversations with the imam, the conflicts, the discussions, and I've been truly blessed with it. I've had some other auditions and other experiences where it wasn't accepted, and that was, troubling, but it's something that I've been used to. As I said, I experienced this all throughout my career in my other professions. So The Blacklist has been a gem for me, and I'm excited about exploring all of the other possibilities of just showing what Muslim life is in everyday times.
Why, oh why, did I have to follow all these amazing people? My name's Obaf Mohammed, born and raised in New York City. I am the first kid of Somali Muslim immigrant parents, the child of an arranged marriage. But the thing about my family that's a little bit more kind of, I guess, just to give a sense of it, I grew up in a family that only spoke Somali, but I only spoke English. So I was kind of like the outsider in my home, and the only place I kind of connected to anywhere really except for school was television and film. It was a lot of the reasons why I would sneak out of the house at like 8 years old to watch a movie, and my mom would call the cops thinking I was kidnapped, but really I was just kidnapped, like Doc Brown or like, John McClane. It's not really a surprise that I ended up working in TV and film because it was the one place I felt like I had a home. But as I've gotten older, I realized that, being Somali and a Muslim has kind of taught me a lot of things about being an outsider and talking to audiences about the fact that we're all kind of the same, but we just kind of come from different backgrounds. We're like different seasonings in a spice rack. We all kind of go together. Some of us don't, but a lot of us do. But for me, I started out basically not knowing how to become a writer or work in film or TV, so I ended up trying to find work as a PA. And I worked my way up through production, and then finally made the transition in 2012 into the writer's room. It took a long time. If I had if I could say honestly what I think happened was because I was a woman and I wasn't a white male, and I hate to say it like that, but it just took so long to get there that basically when I finally broke into the writer's room, I just felt like I had made it, and I hadn't. It was a lot more work, and I learned quite a bit, but I got into the ABC writing program, and that kind of helped launch me. And then where I really felt at home was on Legends of Tomorrow, which was a ragtag bunch of group of people traveling through time, and none of them had the same backgrounds, but they all became family. And that's kind of like how I tell stories. That's kind of how I deal with my relationships, and that's kind of how I interact with the world. So, but I am not a funny person, so sorry. I wish I could say say
think
something
we beg
really.
to differ. We beg to differ.
I wish I could say something clever, but really my journey has been kind of like I think everyone else's. We kind of end up at a place, we do the best we can, and then we kind of move forward.
Hi, my name is Ivala Brahim, and I am also a Somali Black Muslim woman, but we're not the same person. I grew up, like, the first thing I remember is a television in my room. We didn't have much, but we definitely had that. And I kind of grew up watching TV. It was like my babysitter in a way. So my first love was television first, and then it also evolved into film because I had a cousin who managed a movie theater, and I'd basically go in the mornings and spend all day on the weekends watching all these independent films, and ultimately when she got promoted to go to another movie theater, then it was more mainstream. So I kind of started there, and in college had great professors who taught us production from start to finish, so really kind of earned my stripes there. But ultimately, it was my internship in LA through the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, where I was on a television show, a lifetime television show called Any Day Now, for all summer long, for about 3 months. See somebody else, see Sue knows the show. Yes, exactly. And it was an incredible experience, and that's when I learned, like, I could be on a set for like 15, 16, 17, sometimes 15 hours if there was super overtime, and love every second of it. And I was like, how can I do more of this? And you know, I wasn't in computer science or engineering, which is ultimately probably what my family wanted me to do, but I was like, I want to do this in any capacity initially, and started producing independent film in New York, you know, and kind of stepped away from television for a while, and ultimately working around the world in film, independent film, has now kind of worked my way back into the television world. So now I'm both like in the independent film world, but also in the television world, and love every second of it. It's important for me to kind of tell what is represented in my family, nuanced, complicated, you know, stories of people who come from all walks of life. You know, there's billions of Muslims in the world, and we're like all walks of life. That should be represented on our screens, small and big, and so that's important to me. And that's a passion. And so as I step into more writing and directing, it's always important to me to keep representation first and foremost in all of our facets, and hopefully continue to do more of that.
So this panel is about critical mass. How do we get a critical mass of Muslims in the industry? And if one person wants to tackle this question, let's define it. What are we talking about when we say a critical mass?
I mean, for me, I want to be able to create a television show and be able to staff it with Muslim writers who have experience, and for it not to be difficult. And when we made Little Mosque on the Prairie, it was me and like 10 white guys. And I'm like, really? Like, that was it. I had to take these 10 white guys to the mosque on field trips, to the community so they could understand who we were. And there was like no one. I couldn't draw on anyone. And I called a friend of mine in Winnipeg who was a stand-up comedian, Sadia Durrani, and I go, listen, you gotta help me. I cannot be the only brown person writing on a show about brown people. Like, this is insane. Like, every idea was coming out of my head and my lived experience. And it was like you can imagine 20 episodes, and these guys are just looking at you. They have no idea, and you're having to give them idea after idea after idea. I remember I would have writers call me in tears going, I've been assigned a script, I have no idea. And I'd have to like figure it out. And I was outlining other people's scripts, and it was too much pressure to do a whole show and be the only one who had that lived experience. But there was no one I could reach out to, because this was 2007, right? There was no one. And so you had to create those opportunities. So I got a friend in, and she started writing on the show. And then, so now there were 2 of us. And gradually, over time, I noticed that the show gave what a lot of young Muslims said to me for the first time in my life, that I'd heard, I'm not going into medicine or science or engineering, I'm gonna pick the arts. And for the first time I heard parents who said to me, I'm disappointed my child has chosen science or medicine. I wanted them to go into the arts. And I realized that something had flipped, and we were starting to see more young people going into these fields. And a lot of times we hear criticism, well, why aren't you hiring more Muslims? Why aren't you hiring more Muslim actors? And I'm like, because we are still in that nascent stage where they are beginning to get the training, they're beginning to move up the ranks, but we don't have huge numbers. I've created a show for CBC called Zarqa. It's about a bitter, vindictive Muslim woman. And I'm being very conscious to staff it with Muslim writers. I've made Sadia Durrani a co-showrunner because there has to be a succession plan. You need a succession plan on shows where you build showrunners who are the people who take over the show that are people of color, but they have to be trained from the beginning, ground up. And so my idea of a critical mass is I will have, if there's only 6 writers, there will be 6 writers of color. They will all know what their roles are, that they are being trained to take over one day when I can't do it, or that they're being trained to create another show, that they will be able to run that show. Because if you don't have, writing television, as my fellow panelists will tell you, you need years and years and years of training in the ranks of writing rooms to learn the craft and figure out how to actually do it well. You can't just suddenly create a show and say, I'm gonna be the showrunner. Like, it's not that easy. You need to know, you have to have the ability as a writer, and you need that training. So we need people who are staffed in writing rooms who are being trained up the ranks to eventually take over those rooms. So that when someone like me or someone like will say, okay, I created a show, where are the writers? And then she can reach out there and find them from the other writing rooms.
I think that the infrastructure, what you're talking about is infrastructure. I think that that's what we need to build. And you think about it, going off of what you just said, like, the reason that The Daily Show existed or exists is because there was a newspaper called The Onion. And the reason The Onion exists is because there was something called Harvard Lampoon. And you can go back and see like how the infrastructure was created for The Daily Show to exist. It goes all the way back to the Harvard Lampoon, and it goes all the way back. So a lot of it is about creating that infrastructure and also our own community of like how we, like what you were saying, like parents being excited about their kids going into the arts, into writing, into television, into film, into that, because we're not gonna have that infrastructure, because it requires you starting here and then building up and building the sort of the larger infrastructure that it cannot be done by 1 or 2 people. It's done by an entire community, and so I think that's you talk about critical mass. I think that's the only way to create it, because those people have to come from the ground up, and then eventually, like I have several projects that I'm developing right now. They're all mostly with white people, right? Because those are the people that can show run. Those are the people that can ultimately, and even just getting a woman is a difficult thing. So getting a Muslim and a brown person, is even so. I think that's what it needs. Yeah, that's where.
Yeah, and just to chime in, totally agree, and I think that's kind of about disrupting the power structure that exists, so that more of us are in positions of decision-making, creation, power, so that we can hire and create the diverse rooms and projects that we want,
There's a stopgap though. I think that the systems exist, like, your experience was that there weren't Muslim writers. I counter that and say there were Muslim writers, they just weren't presented to you. I think that the system exists to basically keep people in certain places, and I was just going through this experience of like reading a lot of writers, and the majority of the ones that we received were not people, it wasn't inclusive, the list wasn't inclusive, and we had to fight to get inclusive names, and it's a lot of work, and sometimes you don't have the energy to do that because you're fighting a system that exists, that has existed for years, decades, and so you actively have to build your network. And that is a lot of work, to actually go outside and meet a bunch of writers, actors, behind the scenes people, even trying to crew up a show, a pilot. We were trying to be as diverse as possible, and it was near impossible. And I think that, to me, I don't believe that they don't exist, I believe that they don't have access.
Yeah, I think it also has to be a real effort, and I would compare it to like what we did in the fire department. So when I joined the New York City Fire Department in 1996, there was about 10,000 firefighters. Less than 2% were African American. And there was an organization called the Vulcan Society, was professional black firefighters, and they took it upon themselves to go out to high schools, street fairs, basketball courts, colleges, military institutions, and kind of like beg and teach people of color about the fire department. I mean, I grew up in New York City. I never saw a black firefighter. So it didn't dawn on me that I could have that job. So we went around to these high schools and we told these kids about what the fire department entailed, how many days you work, how much money you get, your vacation, what you do. It's not about just fires and dying, it's car accidents and all of these other type of things. And because of that, and a lawsuit, the fire department grew from 2% to I think now it's about 15% people of color. But I think, unfortunately, on Muslim creators, writers, directors, it's kind of also in our laps to go out and recruit people who don't even think of being writers, directors, because they don't see Muslim characters, they don't see themselves on TV, so why would I even be interested in that career? So it's on us kind of to go out there and kind of teach or beg or dangle this carrot and entice them to say, look, you can have a career in this profession and this is what it's about.
And I think what often happens is that you get, a TV show will hire like a token brown person or whatever and just be like, okay, well, we're representing diversity, or this is diversity now, but what you don't have is you don't have that kind of diversity going through the ranks of how that, maybe on screen you see more diversity than we have in decades, but it's really about who's in the writers' rooms and who is giving the thumbs up and the thumbs down to a lot of these projects and stuff. So I think that's also really important.
Critical mass happens when we stop asking about it.
Agreed.
So, I'm just gonna push back with one more question, which is, are we looking for a percentage? Are we looking for quotas? Are we looking for a number to hit? Or is it really the diversity within? And that could be a quick answer from anyone. Just so we know.
I want to walk onto a set where the PA, one of the couple of PAs, the assistant director or the director, or wardrobe or crafty, have people who look like me, who are Muslim, where I'm not just that one person. So I think we reach it when I come onto set and it's not like, oh, Assalamu alaikum. When I come into the set and I'm like, okay, I don't even have to give my salam. It's a given, if that makes sense.
So in the past year, a number of networks have unveiled plans for off-screen diversity and increased commitment to the development of BIPOC scripts about underrepresented people. Although this is encouraging, we have not seen the same commitment to greenlighting these projects. So how do we help them meet those plans?
Do you have $17 million? We can make one right now. Sorry.
Who said you're not funny? You're funny.
So funny. I think the commitment, there has to be action, not just in hearing and taking the meetings, but in actually greenlighting the projects. So the quotas, perhaps need to be applied to like how many projects are greenlit. This is a business ultimately. We know that, show business. That being said, if you're just having meetings, there's tons of ideas out there. People are pitching, like it's their full-time jobs. But what projects are being greenlit? And that's what has to happen. So maybe that's where the quota needs to be.
I think a lot of times what gets bandied about is this idea of, to put it very bluntly, like white men think that other white men are really talented. You know what I mean? So white men think other white men are really funny, just like them, and their stories are really important, and that's what you're sort of up against, right? Because diversity is actually important simply for diversity's sake. And what you hear a lot is it happens with minorities, it happens with
women, and like, you know, we tried, we looked, we just didn't find anybody qualified enough or with experience. We didn't find the right people, you know what I mean? And that's because it's like in a writer's room, for example, a bunch of white guys want to work with other bunch of white guys because they get those guys and they understand them and they sort of speak the same language. They don't want a bunch of like black women in there because those women don't feel like it's part of their DNA, right? So we need to start embracing this idea that diversity is important simply for the sake of diversity, because people, you know, I was producing a show for Apple with my wife, and which I recommend nobody do. So I with my wife, don't produce anything with my wife. No, with just spouses, you know, just sleep together. That's it. No, but we were doing this thing, and it was about it was a show where I was going to go out and talk to people, and it was about race and different things. They were talking about Confederate statues. It was all about Confederate statues, and we had this African American, and I realized, like, because I'm also part of the problem. I realized that, like, I had hired mostly guys in this room, and so then we were like, we want, and my wife pointed this out to me, and I said, okay, like, when we brought in this African American woman, and she was a comedian, and we were talking to her about something very specific about the African American experience, and I remember she said something which none of us in that room would have ever thought of, and it wasn't something so profound. It was just something about her experience and her lived reality, and I thought, and we all went, oh my God, like, you know, and suddenly it dawned on me the value of just having a person who had a perspective that was different from all the guys in that room, and that made all the difference. It opened up our world a little bit just right there. So it is really important for us to embrace voices that we don't necessarily like identify with, you know, or recognize or mirror back to us, you know. In comedy, you see it a lot. Like they're not funny, you know, and it's like, yeah, they're not funny to you because that's not the kind of humor that you gravitate towards because you're white or you're male or whatever it is, you know, or you're 50, you know, and so it's like that I think is important, and it's something that we have to be conscious of, because it's not left to its own. It's never going to change. It's not, because nobody's going to work with people that they always just going to, you know, people are just going to work with people who look like them and like get their jokes and think they're really funny. So I think you're funny, you think I'm funny. Oh, well, let's work together, you know. That's it. And so that, I think, is also part of the consciousness of it, you know.
Kudos to her for saying something, because can you imagine you're in a room full of dudes, one chick, and then all of a sudden you say, well, I have an idea, and they all look at you? I would freeze. It's just like, and I had to work against that feeling. So it's like, and it's actively in a lot of writers' rooms, it's actively in a lot of sets that you're literally the only one, and it is the most awkward feeling because you know everyone's looking at you. And I've been in multiple shows, and I've heard, we tried a black director, we tried that black actor, we had a horrible experience, and then that show never hired another black director or actor again. I've seen it. It's like, it's almost like you have, when you walk into the room, you have the burden of your entire, you're a monolith. And so the thing is, you're not seen as an individual, quirky, weird, or whatever. You're seen as like you represent all black people. So if you make a mistake, you make a mistake for all black people, or minority people, or all women, especially if you go into a room where it's all men.
Right, and
Sorry, no.
I was just gonna say that, you know, and there's a lot of this tagline, like, they don't have enough experience, as you said, and you'll never have experience if you're never hired, and you have to start somewhere, and you have to work your way up, and some people have the opportunity to fail up, and other people only get one shot, and that's the challenge.
Right. Well, I mean, the definition of racism is that you are defined by the minority, like of your whatever race group you are, right? So, like white people always get defined by like by the majority. Like not everybody's like that, just a few people. Whereas if a Muslim does something, it's like, well, a few do it, well, then you must all be like that. It is reverse, right?
Terrorism,
it's like,
right? It's
like,
terrorism, right?
It's the terrorism thing, right?
Right,
Like
so
you're
the
all
white guy who
terrorists
shoots
because
at
5
the
of you are. Where if it's a white guy, you know, you see it all the time. You know, it's like, well, no, it's just some crazy white guy. We're all normal. It's just this one guy was crazy, you know? Muslims can never be crazy. Like, we're never just crazy. We're like, if one guy does something bad, then we all are responsible for it, you know? So it's the same idea. It's like you hire one person, they don't work out. You're like, well, you know,
I tried that.
we tried it. So, yeah.
And that's, and I keep going back to it, that's rampant in the fire department. You know, when you have less than 2% of firefighters that are black, I would go to my firehouse, I'm the only black guy. So we sit down and we eat, and they're having, I think it's kielbasa or something called. I never heard of it.
Sausage, right?
It was a sausage with sauerkraut. I'm sitting at the table like, I don't eat this. And then not me like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, right.
But when you have 6 or 7 guys in the firehouse, black guys, and there's 35 white guys, and now the 6 black guys are like, whoa, we don't eat that. Then it starts to shift a little bit, like, okay, or maybe all 6 are crazy, or maybe, you know, we might need to change our eating habits a little bit, or try what they like to eat. So I really think when it's just one person in the room, it's much harder. It's very difficult.
Much harder, 100%, and I agree. Sometimes, and that's when you have to own your voice and say, no, you're gonna listen to me, I have something to say, whether you want to or not, and get a little bit of a deeper voice sometimes, maybe louder, but make sure you're heard, even if it's hard.
Have you done that, like the deeper hello, my name is Boba? Like, just because then people listen to you, because your voice goes a little high, and they're like, then they just like, their eyes glaze over, you see it happening, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna talk like this.
Yeah. There's a certain pitch
Yeah,
that
you
you
have
just
to do
can't
it.
hear.
And to go back to what you said, Hisham, earlier, where you recited sort of ikhlas, I, watching that, at that moment, didn't know yet if your character was Muslim. And it was that moment where it was like, oh, he's Muslim, and he's saying it correctly. And so there is the shouldering the burden, but also the fact that if you want authentic representations, if you want the real deal when it comes to Muslims, then put a Muslim on the set. Put a Muslim behind the screen. Give the Muslim the pen, right? So, and now, I'm gonna ask the question, how? Okay, so how do we push the industry in helping us create a critical mass? How can we get more opportunities? What is the industry missing? How do we know when we've reached our desired outcomes? You don't have to answer all of those questions at one time, but any of those questions. I'm passing the mic to you, Zarka.
So I decided to do something different. I said, instead of going out trying to get jobs or getting myself in a writing room, I'm like, I have enough experience where I can show run a room, so I'm gonna create my room and I'm gonna create the show, and I'm just gonna find the money and just do it. I'm gonna circumvent the system. And I'm gonna own my own IP, and I'm not going to sell my idea again, like I did with Little Mosque on the Prairie, and I have earned that right now because I have put the time in. And so in the Canadian system, there's money, there's grant money. So we spent 2 years getting almost $1 million together through grants, created a show called Zarka, picked the writing room, hired the writing room. And it was because I live in Saskatchewan, which is above North Dakota, we have a 16% Indigenous community. So if you think Muslims have it bad in television, way worse. And it was important for me, we're gonna have an Indigenous writer, we have an Indigenous director, Indigenous producer, and I will hire them because I own it and I get to make the decisions. And so I decided the only way to change the system is sometimes you have to make the system come to you. And then create a product, and then CBC gave us the license, and we aired it. And I wanted to make it small enough because if I want to own a production company and I want to understand the nuts and bolts of a production company from top to bottom, how does one make a television show? How do you negotiate with an agent? How do you make budgets? How do you do post-production? I wanted to learn every step of it. And you could do it if it's a web series, so like 6 episodes, 10 minutes, but the idea was learn to do it and then make a product and then sell that product to a broadcaster who depends on you for the product and make the system come to you. And then, so it's airing right now, and make sure you have a ton of money for discoverability so that people can come. So when CBC looks at all the shows that they have on their streaming servers, like this one has the highest ratings because we went and got $100,000 in discoverability funds and record them into ads on Facebook and Instagram. I'm sorry, it's geo-blocked right now to CBC Gem because CBC Gem is Canadian. But to me, so then we got together and said we did
Where did
really
you
well.
get your money?
From production grants in Canada. So in Canada, it's a different system because we have 30 million people and you have 300 million people. The government tries to protect its cultural sector by giving grants to filmmakers. So you have to be almost better at filling out application forms, and then you have to be in actually making the product. But I hired the right people, and so now we're like thinking second season, make it bigger, make it longer, and find even, staff the rooms with Muslims and Indigenous people and get those directors and actors. And like, this is where the power is. Like, if the only way you can have the power is to own your own IP and make the system dependent on you. So I'm trying to figure out how do you circumvent the system so you're not always dependent on them to hire you, where they're like, oh my God, she made this incredible show and it's the highest rated show, we need the second season. Like, we have to come to her now. So I'm trying to figure out what's the next stage. How do we get past always having to beg and one part of it getting our shows greenlit? How do we get past that? Anyway, I'm trying to figure that out right now. And it's an exciting stage because now I look around myself and I look at this panel, like there are people I can draw on, there are writers, there are actors that I can reach out and say, hey, can you be on this show? And I will be the one who will be making the creative decisions. So for me, that's
I don't work in Canada. I'm kidding. No, I think it's actually a really great model, and I think that there is an audience out there for it, as you have seen. I think that now with the streaming services that we have that go global, you start to see that there's a whole world. It used to be when I was first starting out, it was basically like, how are you going to appeal to like the guy in Indiana? How are you going to like make a show for that guy? And now it's how you're going to make a show for like the guy in India or the guy in China. It's so the model has really drastically changed I think in our favor. And so now it's like I feel like my agents are constantly asking me for product. Because because Netflix has figured out that everyone in America has Netflix now, but there's a whole globe out there of people that don't have, and so we want to make content for them. So the time to make content as a person of color, as a Muslim, as a whatever, as a non-white American person is now, So I think to circumvent the system or to even just create the content and just try to put it out there and take it to places, these streamers, I think they're looking for it now. So it wasn't the case when I first started out at all.
What I've taken away from this whole conversation is I'm marrying a Canadian. I decided I want to get grants and own my own IP.
sadly taken, but.
I'm telling you, don't work with your spouse. Don't do it.
So we have some time for Q&A. We wanted to open it up, and I'll wait for being flagged. So we'll start. You had your hand up in the back.
Everything y'all have said has just resonated with me so much because I work in television and film. I work in the production office right now. I'm trying to move my way up.
I've done that.
And I work here in Austin, so it's super difficult. You try to find people of color to work on your sets, to be in the office, so you're not the only one represented. It's just like how you said, when you walk on a set and you see someone that looks like you, you're like, oh, yes, thank you. What is your advice for people who don't work in LA or New York or Atlanta to try to get that representation here in our towns that are an industry town, but it's still highly Caucasian, and get these people in the rooms, in the production office, to be the producers, to be the UPMs, to be in the writer's room? What can we do, us people of color that are working here?
Can I start with one thing? Contact MPAC. For example, if you're looking for Muslims, the MPAC Hollywood Bureau has, a variety of folks that it can put you in touch with. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh,
cut
no,
you off.
I'm just thinking of like Austin specifically, the university. I
Yeah.
think like really doing a lot of outreach, they probably have like a TV film department of some
They
sort.
do, but it's
And-
still highly.
Yes, and then I would like, I would actually reach out to schools, I would put things online, it really is like you have to let them know you're there, and it's kind of like making a lot of noise. There's some even, I wouldn't say this to everyone, but some people, I've traveled for film shoots. I've worked in Albuquerque for 3 or 4 months, I've worked in New Mexico, I've worked in Alabama. I've done shoots all over as production staff, so you could outsource people from different places, but if you wanna go into Austin or even Texas, I'm sure there's a huge Hispanic population. I'm sure some of those kids want to do TV and film, they just don't know they have access to it. It's a lot of work, but if you want to take that on,
Yeah.
then you have to take it on. You have
Yeah,
to
I've
dig
been
deep.
networking with all of us brown people everywhere, just like, hey, let's all try to get in there, but it's still, we're still a small minority here in town, that work, and a lot of us have left to go work where we can get the work, and doesn't
Baby
come back.
steps too, like
Yeah.
you should be proud that you're even trying.
Yeah.
And then keep pushing forward, but like at least you're making the effort. A lot of people don't have time or energy to do it, so you should give yourself a pat on the back for that.
You had your question up, hand up, yes.
Yeah, I have a white guy question.
Oh, man.
Here, I think you need the mic for this one.
Okay. I'm a journalist who's transitioning into screenwriting, and I spent most of the past 15 years living in Cairo and Istanbul, and so a lot of my characters are Muslims, Arabs, and Turks, and I sort of oscillate from being, the world doesn't need another white guy writing about Muslims, Arabs, and Turks, but I still don't see these stories on television or in film, and so, like, how can I, like, be a better ally, or should I step aside? What is the role I should play, if any?
Yours might get made before mine.
And then, can you help me hire everybody?
No, I mean, the thing is, at least you're telling the story, and then if you are blessed to go to series, then you would hire an inclusive staff to help you build the world out. I don't, personally, I know some people don't believe this, I don't believe I should just write Muslim stories. I want to write every story, and that's what I think is kind of like the gift of being creative. We're not relegated to one thing. You could be an atheist on a television show and be Muslim. That's the gift of being a creative. I don't think you should just write stories about non-inclusive people or inclusive people. You have the scope to do both. And I think you should be proud to do both. And I think if your story gets made, I'm excited. I just hope that when you're blessed to that part, inshallah, that you get a staff part of this story, so that basically you're not telling it from your point of view. Because even though you've had that experience, you haven't lived it.
Yes.
Yes, well, thank you guys for such an enlightening panel, all of you. But my question was, it seems to me the problem largely, without it being really said but inferred, is it's a trickle-down problem with whoever's in charge of greenlight. So what can we do as like audience and fans and whatnot to help you guys get that done quicker?
I'm not really sure it's all the fault of the people who greenlight it. I mean, I've worked on productions where, let's say, someone's in charge of hiring the PAs, and they only hire people that look like them. So that doesn't come from the top. That's that's his or her job, or the wardrobe department. Like, I think it just doesn't come from the top. It's all every in this business, there's so many positions, and everybody's position, you have kind of the authority to hire and fire who you want. Like, I was surprised when I found out that there was a Broadway play, I think The Temptations, all black cast, hair department was all white. And a friend of mine who was black got to get on the show, but all of the cast gravitated to her because she knew how to do the hair and the special things. And she all of a sudden became the problem, was let go. But it just reminded me, this didn't come from the top. The hair department is in charge of hiring who they want. Makeup is in charge of hiring who they want. So I think, yes, we can blame some of the top people, but it trickles all the way down. And as far as what you can do, I think now there's just the power of the pen, there's Twitter, there's social media. How come I don't see this person looking like me? But a lot of the people in the audience don't know who the PAs are, who hair and makeup is, who wardrobe is, who all of that is. But I think on your side, when you see something and it not only doesn't reflect your experience, but you want to see someone else's experience, write about it, tweet about it. You hit up the showrunner on Twitter. I mean, you have access to talk to these people.
Yeah, I think supporting the content that is being created as an audience is a huge thing. You know, when you have, you know, there are organizations like Gold House, for example, which is a large Asian American and South Asian, and you know, which supports and now sort of is more activated in terms of creating and supporting and getting the word out about content that is, you know, when you have a show like, even though it's not necessarily a Muslim thing, but it was a South Asian, there was Never Have I Ever, which was on Netflix. And of course you had Mindy Kaling, who was the big, you know, the showrunner in that situation. You know, it was the #1 show in the world, right? And that's a huge thing. You have Crazy Rich Asians, which came out, and it was the, you know, and so there is the power of the community getting behind something and sort of, you know, supporting it and you know, tweeting about it, writing about it. You know, your social media is a huge tool to support the content. So.
I've been flagged multiple times, so I think we can go on for hours with this group. I'm hopeful that some folks can stick around for a few more questions after the panel if folks have time. But I just want to make one quick announcement. June 26th, the Muslim Public Affairs Council will be hosting its 30th annual Media Awards, where we get to showcase voices of conscience and courage and highlight talent, whether you're behind the screen, in front of the screen, and it'll be virtual, so everyone, even in Austin, can access it. And you know, I think this is so rich, and I think a takeaway, really, I mean, we're talking about making narrative change. Why? Because we're sick and tired of other people speaking for us. I mean, I will just say that bluntly. It's time for us to speak for ourselves. If you want to see authentic characters, you have to pull in people from that community, whether it's to do their hair right, whether it's to, it's true, hair is a big issue for all women, but yes, black women hair is very specific, my girlfriends tell me. So I get that, we understand that, and that we're amongst allies, and it's important to really collaborate and find ways to connect so that we push the industry in the right direction, because in the end of the day, numbers matter. And that is within, but also the numbers that we reach internationally, because that translates into monetary, different kind of numbers, right? Monetary value. So thank you very, very much. Can we give everyone a big round of applause?